Hey Panda here, and in today's video we're going to be going over two brand new Bungie newsletters, one of them being the Season 21 Abilities Tuning Preview, and the other being the weekly This Week at Bungie newsletter. There's a lot of good information that we have to cover, and I have a short amount of time to do it, so let's jump right in. Bungie has heard the feedback about your favorite aspect only giving you one fragment slot, and about how that feels bad. So in Season 21, they are making some changes, specifically to the Hunter's Trapper's Ambush, Shadow Dive and Gunpowder Gamble, Titan's Bastion and Juggernaut, and Warlock's Chaos Accelerant aspects. These aspects now will give you 2 fragment slots instead of 1. Bungie also makes a note that this change may not be permanent, and the aspects themselves may receive a tuning pass in a future update if they are to keep these 2 fragment slots. Your favorite roaming supers in PvE are all receiving a 20% damage resist increase. That is all. Moving into the specific classes, for Hunters, their Golden Gun is receiving a 20% damage increase, along with Arc Staff, which is also receiving a 20% damage increase. Spectral Blades will see a 35% damage increase, and now the heavy attack will weaken the target on hit. They have also fixed an issue causing some right-hand Spectral Blades attacks to fail to connect when attacking at maximum attack speed. On the PvP side of things, the Gathering Storm Super is receiving some changes. The direct impact damage versus players is being upped from 200 to 300. The delayed lightning strike damage versus players is being increased from 300 to 500. The lingering tick damage versus players is being increased from 40 to 60, and it will now deal increased damage to Well of Radiance and Ward of Dawn. Titan Supers are also getting a tuning. The Fist of Havoc light attack cost will be reduced from 8.5% to 6%. The heavy attack also receiving reduced cost from 18% to 12%. The heavy attack will see a 33% damage increase in PvE, and the heavy attack will now blind targets near the center of the slam area. For Stasis, the Glacial Quake Shiver Strike thrust speed while in Super will be increased by 10%, and the light attack damage is receiving a 20% damage increase. Sentinel Shield PvE damage is getting bumped by 20%, Hammer of Soul PvE damage is getting bumped by 10%, and Burning Maul is also seeing that 10% damage increase. Additionally, Burning Maul will now create a Sunspot on cast, just like Hammer of Soul. The heavy attack with Burning Maul will now apply Scorch over time. Warlocks, it is your turn. The Nova War PvE damage will be increased by 15%. A fully charged attack will now make enemies volatile on hit. Nova Bomb PvE damage is receiving a 20% increase. Storm Trance damage increase, 25%. The damage ramp up while attacking now occurs more quickly, over 3 seconds instead of the previous 5 seconds. The Landfall Detonation and Seekers will now jolt targets. Chaos Reach is receiving a 25% damage increase, and sustained damage on a single target will now create jolting lightning strikes at the target's location. It is also receiving increased damage resist versus players from 40% to 50%. The maximum strafe speed you can move at during the super is being increased from 3.5 meters to 4.5 meters. The position of the super camera has also been adjusted to avoid the player's body blocking view from the targets when strafing. The Winter's Wrath super is receiving a small 10% damage increase, and the Daybreak super is just getting a camera adjustment. Strand is also receiving some tuning updates. Getting started with the Hunter, the Threaded Spike melee is seeing a lot of changes, and they are as follows. Increased the projectile travel speed before beginning to return to the player by 30%. Increased the damage versus PvE combatants by 55%. Slightly reduced the speed of the dart as it returns to the player to make it easier to catch. Increase the energy gain for catching the dart based on the number of enemies hit. It now pierces Cabal Phalanx shields. It no longer prioritizes the catch action over the grapple melee if an enemy is within grapple melee range. The Titan Frenzy Blade melee is receiving some changes as well. Decrease the cooldown based on how many melee charges the player has stored. At 0 charges, the cooldown will be reduced by 15%. At 2 charges, the cooldown will be reduced by 30%. The Warlock Arcane Needle is also seeing some changes. It will see a decreased cooldown based on how many charges the player has stored. At 0 charges, the cooldown will be reduced by 15%. At 2 charges, the cooldown will be reduced by 30%. Increased projectile speed based on the projectile's flight time. Initial velocity increased to 40 meters per second, up from 30. The final velocity will be increased to 70 meters per second, up from 60. Its tracking strength is also being increased by 10%. Grapple as a whole will be getting its base cooldown reduced from 105 seconds to 82 seconds. You will also see a reduced minimum time between grapple activations from 2.5 seconds to 0.2 seconds. The thread of generation aspect is seeing some adjustments. Reduced grenade energy generation provided by some damage over time mechanics. This would be the Osteostriga or Witherhoard, I presume. And we'll also see reduced energy generation provided by trace rifles by 36%. There are some stasis changes as well. The Hunter Withering Blade, projectile tracking, search range on bounce versus players will see a 20% increase. The maximum tracking strength of the melee overall will see a 12.5% increase. The Titan Shiver Strike maximum thrust while in flight will be increased by 16%, and it will see a decreased maximum downward influence of gravity while in flight by 18%. The Hell of the Storm Freezing Cone versus players is being increased by 31%. The Warlock Frost Pulse, which freezes combatants on Rift Cast if they are near you, will see a 2 meter increase of additional melee lunge range after activation for 1.2 seconds. Titans, you are going to hate this one. The Seismic Strike, Shield Bash, and Hammer Strike will now expend 15% ability charge if you do not connect with a target. This means if you use your Seismic Strike, Shield Bash, or Hammer Strike, you now will not be able to spam those abilities with no cooldown. At 100 strength, the 15% energy that is expended will take about 7 seconds to return, and at 0 strength, it will take about 17 seconds before you can use your Shoulder Bash ability again. Knockout, the Arc Titan aspect, is also seeing a change. The lunge range will be reduced from 6.5 meters to 5.5 meters, and the uncharged melee versus PvE combatants will be increased from 60% to 100%. The Shield Throw ability for Void Titans is seeing a base impact damage increase from 60 to 70, and it is receiving a consistency increase of finding and adjusting initial trajectory toward a new target after a bounce. The Throwing Hammer Solar Melee will now adjust its initial flight trajectory based on your aim assist target, whatever that means. The Hunter Snare Bomb Weakened effect is having its duration doubled from 4 to 8 seconds. Also worth noting that that change is in PvE only. Proximity Explosive Knife is seeing its detonation damage versus players being reduced from 105 to 90. The impact damage versus players is being increased from 14 to 20. The Weighted Throwing Knife is seeing a change on mouse and keyboard only. It will reduce the minimum tracking shape size by 25% and maximum tracking shape size by 10%. This shape grows over 0.5 seconds after the projectile is thrown. The Lightweight Knife projectile speed is being increased from 30 meters per second to 40 meters per second, and the tracking shape size will be increased by 20%. In addition to Gunpowder Gamble's additional fragment slot, its cooldown is being reduced from 12 seconds to 6 seconds. Warlocks are seeing some changes to Incinerator Snap, Ball Lightning, and a pair of Chaos Accelerant boosted grenades. For Incinerator Snap, they have fixed an issue preventing the secondary projectile's arming shape from activating. The total damage versus players is being reduced from 150 to 135 to compensate for dramatically increased consistency. The Ball Lightning melee on Arc Warlock is seeing a 30% PvE damage increase, and it is also seeing a reduced ping scaler on both primary and secondary detonations, so combatants are less likely to be knocked out of the secondary strike area, while the players amplify. The Chaos Accelerant Scatter Grenade is getting increased tracking consistency and increased sub-munition arming duration. The Magnetic Grenade, or otherwise known as the Handheld Supernova, is seeing an increased charged hold time from 3.2 seconds to 4.5 seconds. The Lightning Surge Arc Warlock melee slide ability is losing its ability to one-shot PvP combatants through objects, and in doing so has also received a very slight damage increase. To round out the Season 21 ability tuning preview, we have the subclass keyword tuning updates. For Scorch, it will increase the stun time before stacks begin falling off from 1.5 seconds to 2.3 seconds on players. They are also increasing the stun time before stacks begin falling off from 3 seconds to 4.5 seconds on PvE combatants. Jolt is seeing a 15% damage reduction in PvE. It is also seeing a reduced additional damage scaler versus major combatants in PvE by 20%. Speed Booster is seeing some changes. The bonus jump acceleration scaler will be reduced from 1.5 to 1.25. It will now activate after sprinting after 2.5 seconds, down from 3 seconds. It will now linger on the player who is not sprinting for 2 seconds, up from 1.5 seconds. They have fixed a bug where if a player was sprinting and then became amplified, now they will actually receive the Speed Booster buff. And that closes out the Season 21 ability tuning preview. We are going to transition over into the most recent This Week at Bungie newsletter. If you did not already know, Season 21 is called Season of the Deep, and taking a look at this cover art, it looks like we are going to be returning to the planet of Titan and helping our old friend Sloane out, where if you look closely, she seems to be suffering from some Taken affliction. We finally get to find out what the new strand aspects will be, so here is the breakdown. The Hunters will be receiving the Threaded Scepter aspect. On class ability activation, you will leave behind a decoy woven from strand matter that draws attention of nearby combatants. After taking significant damage, or when combatants approach, the decoy will detonate, dealing damage and releasing threadlings that seek out and attack nearby foes. The Titans will be gaining the Flechette Storm aspect. What this will do is it will allow you to activate an ability while sliding that will send you into the air, knocking nearby targets away and dealing damage. While airborne, you can activate your charged melee again to launch a cluster of damaging, unraveling projectiles. Repeatedly activating this melee will chain additional throws. Warlocks will be receiving the Wanderer aspect. Tangles that you throw will attach to enemies and detonate into a suspending burst. Threadling final blows will create a tangle. Bungie mentioned in an earlier update, but they are covering it again. In Season 21 comes exotic armor focusing. At Tier 1, you'll be able to focus an exotic engram from a certain time period, and this will cost an exotic engram, 30,000 glimmer, and 1 ascendant shard. At Tier 2, you will be able to focus a specific armor piece, and it will require ownership of the associated expansion, as well as having previously acquired that exotic piece of armor. It will have a higher cost, which will consist of an exotic engram, 60,000 glimmer, 3 ascendant shards, and 1 exotic cipher. The exotic cipher cap is being increased from 1 to 5. If this does not interest you, there will always be the standard exotic engram decryption, and this will be free. With the new season arriving, Bungie is adding deep sight activation on weapons that don't have a red border. They are adding a new currency called Deep Sight Harmonizer, which will be found in the Season Pass, and will allow you to turn non-deep sight weapons that can be crafted into a deep sight one. What this means is that if you missed out on previous craftable weapons, you now have the chance to craft them eventually. The legendary shard cost is being removed from crafting completely, but the glimmer and enhancement core cost is remaining unchanged. The previous raid exotics are getting the conditional finality and hierarchy of needs treatment. If you complete triumphs related to that activity, your drop chance for the exotic, such as Touch of Malice, Eyes of Tomorrow, Vex Mythoclast, and 1000 Voices, will be increased upon completion of those triumphs. I will now show the rates of the increase on screen. There you go. Finest Matterweave and Rainmaker are leaving. They're being depreciated. Now upon dismantle, Rainmaker will grant 3000 glimmer, and Finest Matterweave will just drop the enhancement core. Vanguard bounties are receiving some changes. Existing Vanguard bounties can now be completed anywhere in the game. The trade-off for this is now they take twice as long to complete. The progress for these bounties will be increased if you complete them in Vanguard Ops or Nightfall. If you only do Vanguard bounties in the Vanguard playlist, which is what we do now, you will see no change in this behavior. They are also adding a few new types of bounties, killing elites, mini-bosses, and champions, kills with elemental abilities, with bonuses for killing with a subclass verb, and complete 2 Vanguard activities. Bungie's seasonal model has always charged us around 1,000 silver to buy each season, but that is changing. The Season Pass will now cost 1,200 silver, and the Season Pass plus 10 ranks bundle will cost 2,200 silver. If you bought the Deluxe Edition, you won't notice anything, because you already purchased all the seasons. Do with that information what you will. The rest of the TWAB this week is Trials of Osiris changes, so if you don't care, you can go ahead and click away from the video now. For those of us that still play Trials for some reason, we are seeing some new cosmetics being added to the Trials loot pool, being a ghost, ship, sparrow, and a shader. They're actually adding a few shaders over the course of the next few seasons, so when you go flawless, be on the lookout for those. Here they are on screen, all of the loot that is coming with Season 21. The Messenger and the Unexpected Resurgence Glaive are being added back into the Trials of Osiris loot pool. That is all. Bungie recently changed how Trials of Osiris matchmaking worked, with a challenger pool and a practice pool. If you follow Trials of Osiris news, you likely already know what these pools mean, so I won't cover them in too much depth in this video. All you really need to know is that Bungie is happy with how the Trials matchmaking turned out, and you shouldn't expect it to change anytime soon. The Passage of Wealth and Passage of Mercy are seeing a few changes. For the Passage of Wealth, previously granted increased reputation on wins 3, 5, and 7. In Season 21, the passage will now grant plus 75 Trials rep for every win, along with an additional bonus rep for your current major rank Trials, up to a total of 150. This encourages players to stay on the same win card and take advantage of the system, granting more reputation for wins later in the card. For the Passage of Mercy, it will now forgive 2 losses for your first flawless run every week. Once you go flawless, the Passage of Mercy will revert to only forgiving a single loss. Bungie is changing the way new players access Trials by requiring them to complete their competitive placement matches, get 50 kills in competitive, and raise their power level to an arbitrary number. Step 2 of this new Trials intro quest will be to pick up a Trials passage, play a game of Trials, win 1 round, and get an elimination. The reward for this quest will be a roll of the Astral Horizon shotgun. In a rather drastic change, the main game mode of Trials is being changed from Elimination to Dominion, more commonly known as Zone Capture. Bungie feels as though this will create a stronger, more fluid meta and allow them to choose the map each week for Trials a lot easier. In order to gild your flawless title, the requirements to do so are getting a lot more complex. I would read them off, but I'll just leave them on screen for a few more seconds so that you can get a general idea about how difficult it is going to be. Which is a lot. It's a lot more difficult. Like a lot. And there you have it. There's every change named in these 2 newsletters. I combined them both into one video for easy viewing. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.